right, so I work out. Hopefully you can tell. I also like to eat. I know you can tell that. I try to do both in equal measure to try and balance each other out. I like to lift weights way more than I like to do cardio because I am a normal human, right? Matter of fact, I'll spiritualize that. The Bible says that the wicked run when no one is chasing them, okay? And that to me just says everything you need to know. Lifting weights is biblical. So I like to lift, and lifting weights, actually what that does is it breaks down the muscle, right? It exhausts the muscle when you're working out. And then when you rest, the muscle's able to grow and get stronger and hopefully a little prettier and all that stuff, right? So you break it down. Now there's a couple of different ways you can break your muscle down classically. You can lift with a lot of weight and lift it a few times, a few reps, right? Or you can flip that and you can do a little bit lower weight and way higher reps, right? And you can kind of mess with those and you can keep your muscles on their toes and you can keep growing just by adjusting those two variables. And for a long time, I thought those were the only two variables. But there is actually a third one. Inside of a workout, you can adjust how much you're lifting, you can adjust how many times you're lifting it, you can also adjust how much you rest in between the sets. You can make it longer, you can make it shorter. And if you reduce the amount of rest in between sets, what happens is it actually lowers the amount of weight you can lift and it lowers the amount of reps you can do. There's actually kind of a term for it. They call it volume training. I remember the first time I did it, and I read this article, on the internet, totally where you get all the information, and it said, here's the way the workout works, and it suggested a certain amount of weight for my body type and all that. So I put the weight on the bar, and I remember looking at the bar going, I can lift more than that. That's lightweight. So I started in on the workout and I did my set, and then I rested a tiny little bit, the amount it suggested, and I did my set and I rested a tiny little bit, or did my set, and I remember getting about halfway through the workout and I had to take weight off of what I thought was already too light because my arms were shaking so much. And when I got done with the workout and I looked at the bar, I remember having the sense that I can lift more than that. I'm stronger than that. That made my brain, maybe my ego couldn't handle what that was saying. And it actually didn't have anything to do with the amount of weight or the amount of reps, everything to do with the amount of rest I was giving my muscles. So, we're in a series right now called Sound Mind, where we're looking at mental health. And last week we looked at a vision for what your mental health could be, should be, and I poured my whole self into trying to convince you to believe that vision was possible through Jesus. And today what I want to do is I want to look at a possible reason that your mental health isn't what it should be. Now there are lots of possible reasons, probably as many possible reasons as there are people in this room, so I don't have time to go into all of those things, but the one we're going to look at today I think is pretty common these days. And I'll ask it as a question. If it's true that my muscles' ability to function are greatly affected by the amount of rest I give them in between using them, isn't it probably true of my mental ability and function as well? If a lack of rest causes my muscles to not be able to operate at peak performance, then isn't it probably true that a lack of rest causes my brain to not be able to operate at peak performance? Now, there's a lot of other stuff that could mess with my muscles, right? There's a lot of other reasons that my muscles might not operate at peak performance. I could have a bad diet. I could have a bad workout plan. I could have a lot of different those things. But I know for certain that a lack of rest will cause my muscles not to perform. And I want to say the same goes for your mental health. Lots of other stuff that could cause your brain not to perform. Lots. But I want to say for certain that a lack of rest will cause your brain not to perform. So what if part of the reason you're not as mentally healthy as you could be, I'm not accusing you of not being mentally healthy, but you're not as healthy as you could be, is because of a lack of rest? Not the whole reason. This isn't some silver bullet that's going to fix everything, but a part of the reason is because you lack rest. So, when God created everything, one of the things that God seemed to build into creation was rhythms. If you notice this, if you read the creation account, you just kind of look at the way God made things. Rhythm seems to be a part of the way God likes to do things. Day, night, day, night, day, night. Tide goes out, tide comes in, tide goes out, tide comes in. Summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring. Hungry, you eat. You get hungry again, you eat again, you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out, you're awake, you sleep. Do you see the way God does? It's almost like a trademark, a rhythm. It's like a signature of God's handiwork on his creation. And one of the rhythms that God built into human creation is rest. Look at Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. So God created everything in 6 days. Just did a work in 6 days. And then on the seventh day, he rested. Not because he needed it. He is all powerful. He did not need to rest. He rested to give us an example. He rested to start this rhythm for us so that we wouldn't have an excuse. If God rested on the seventh day, we can't say, I don't need one. He was beginning a work-rest rhythm, and he's inviting us into this rhythm. Your life works best when it's lived in harmony with the way God created the world to work, and this harmony with the way God created you to work is a work-rest rhythm. Now, just so you know, I understand that there's a debate in Christian circles about whether or not the Sabbath is still in effect after Jesus. Do we really still have to have 6 days of work and 1 day of rest? And or is it a principle that can be applied? And I'm not trying to get into that debate today. So if you want to have that debate, see Pastor Chris after church in the lobby. I'll have that debate with you. What I'm trying to get at is there's no scenario where anybody sitting in here could go, no, God's will for me is to work and 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 work. Nobody can say that because it's obvious in the Bible that God created a rhythm for us. Now, I'm guessing there's not too much pushback. I'm thinking you might have a couple of workaholics in here. You probably understand that you need some kind of rest in your life. But what's tricky is there's different kinds of rest, right? And I think this is part of what trips us up. So there's a physical rest, and you can sleep and you'll feel better, right? Like that actually works. So a physical rest needs a physical exhaustion needs a certain kind of rest. There's a social rest, right? All the introverts said amen, right? You need the rest from that. We're kind of like cats when it comes to that. I need 22 hours of social rest every 2 hours of social exertion. If you're in the creative world, there's a creative rest that you need sometimes. Or if you're constantly outputting creatively, you need to be able to rest and take something in as well. And all of these look different, right? The kind of exhaustion is specific to the kind of rest that you need. So the ones we're after today are specifically a mental rest and an emotional rest. And that's going to be specific. You need mental and emotional rest regularly in your life. But what if I told you that I think there's something preventing you from resting? Something that's in the way of you resting specifically mentally and specifically emotionally. There's this great movie called Age of Ultron, one of the Avengers movies. It's amazing. I quote these movies all the time. If you really want to go here, you should probably watch all those because you won't get my references. And I'm going to keep referencing the ones from back then because I don't understand the new ones. It's part of being old. You're like, oh yeah, those ones are cool. So Age of Ultron, great movie. It's the Avengers are fighting this robot, this killer robot, and I know that sentence is dumb. Whatever, watch the movie, it's cool. They're having, before they fight, in one of the scenes, they have this philosophical argument. So they're actually arguing with each other before they actually fight each other. And they're going back and forth, and the robot's taking this stance, and they're taking a stance, and they get to this point where one of the Avengers says to Ultron, the robot, he says, if you believe in peace, then let us keep it. Like, why are you fighting us here? We're trying to keep peace. And Ultron says back, and this is crazy, he says, I think you're confusing peace with quiet. That's deep for a robot, right? And what he's saying is, just because it's quiet doesn't mean there's peace. Quiet looks like peace. Quiet could easily be confused with peace, but it's not peace. And I think that's actually a good point. Now, he goes on to try and destroy the human race, so he's wrong. But what if we're making a similar mistake with rest? What if there's something that seems like rest but isn't rest? Something that's close to rest but isn't quite rest. Something that, because you think it is rest, takes the place of rest, and because it takes the place of rest, it prevents true rest because it seems like rest even though it isn't rest. I think you're confusing peace with quiet, so let me take that and say I think a lot of times you're confusing rest with escape. You're confusing rest with escape. You think you're resting, but instead you're actually just doing this thing called escape, and you're not resting. And they're not the same thing. Rest, true restorative rest, is not the same thing as escape in your life. And what's happened is escape has taken the place of rest. And that means you're not getting true rest, which is why you feel perpetually like you're not operating at your best. Without true rest, your mental health over time is actually slowly deteriorating. You're not as strong as you could be mentally because you're not getting the rest that you need, because instead of resting, you're escaping. And instead of drinking water, you're drinking salt water. It's actually slightly making things worse over time. Now, I hope you're asking a question at this point. The question that should be bubbling to the surface is, okay, what's the difference? What's the difference between rest and escape? Because they seem like the same thing. We even use them kind of interchangeably sometimes. You ever said, oh, we're going on a little escape here? And we kind of interpret that as, oh, I'm going to be resting while we're doing this. Or I need to escape for a minute. We use them interchangeably, but they are not the same. So I want to give you some differences. How you can know whether or not in your life you are resting or you are escaping. So here's your first tell. You come back from escape the same as you left. You come back from escape the same as you left, if not worse. You ever play video games and you pause the game? You know, it wasn't an online game. You could actually pause it, tell your mom. And you go and you get a snack and you go to the bathroom, you come back and then you hit unpause. What happened? Nothing, right? Wherever you pause the game is exactly where you pick it back up. If you were in the middle of a huge battle, the moment you hit unpause, boom, the battle is right back. Nothing has shifted, nothing has changed. You better be ready for it, right? Escape is kind of like that. You pause your life, and when you unpause, nothing has changed. Nothing externally has changed, but maybe more importantly, nothing internally has changed either. You are the same. You don't feel any different. And when your escape has to be over and you have to unpause, usually you don't want to hit unpause, but you know, life demands that you hit unpause. You don't feel any different. Your soul is the same. Your mental state is the same. Your situation is certainly still the same. Nothing's changed. You just paused. What would you call an escape where you ended up the same place you started? Isn't that a failed prison break? You circled back around and you ended up in the same place. You're not free. Escape doesn't make anything better. Matter of fact, I would argue that it makes things slightly worse. When you come back from escaping, you feel kind of guilty. You feel kind of slimy. Your brain's kind of foggy. And everything you were escaping from is waiting for you, and all that stuff that you were escaping from now feels bigger, now feels heavier, now feels worse than it did before. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of different ways you could escape. Let's say you spend a night drinking to escape. When you wake up the next morning after a night of drinking to escape, do you feel better? Let's go. No, you feel exactly the same and dehydrated, and you have a headache, right? That's worse, actually. When you put your phone down after a long, extended scrolling session, do you feel better? You're like, let's go take on the world. No, right? You feel a little bit like there's a film over between you and the world, right? You feel like you're fogged out after doing that. What about if you sit down to eat a whole bag of potato chips to escape? Do you feel better when you're done? No. That cholesterol coursing through your veins. No, it's worse. It's worse. One of the ways you can tell that you are escaping instead of resting is that there's no difference between the beginning and the end of it. If there is a difference, you're slightly worse off than before you started. So that's a tell. And that's an important one. Because if you think you're resting and you're really just escaping, and you think that this thing that you're doing for whatever amount of time you're doing it is going to make it better so that you can come back and hit the thing that, accept all the heaviness and all the stress and all the pain of life, and instead of making it better, it actually just pauses things, and actually you just kind of have to continue on with life, and you're going to slowly and slowly and slowly get worse and worse and worse. That's a really big deal if escape is taking the place of rest. That's the first tell. The second way you can tell the difference between rest and escape is addictive. Escape is addictive, which is the great irony of escape. We call it escape, but the escape becomes itself a prison. You were supposed to be free from one thing, but then it just ends up enslaving you to itself. Now, part of what makes these insidious is because most of the escapes that we do aren't necessarily bad things at first. And that's what is so tricky about this. Because the things that you use to escape aren't inherently evil, right? I don't believe that TikTok is evil. I don't know much about it because I'm too old for TikTok. I don't know how to use it. I use Instagram Reels. I see TikTok 2 weeks later on there. I'm not with that. But I don't think that's evil. I don't think video games are inherently evil. I don't think shopping is inherently evil. I don't think alcohol is inherently evil. I don't think eating is inherently evil. I don't think watching shows on Netflix is inherently evil. But when they get a hold of you, it changes. Look at 1 Corinthians 6:12. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. This is Paul writing to this church in Corinth, and he's kind of having this argument in his own mind with them, like, oh, you say that you have the right to do anything. Sure you do. But I will not be mastered by anything. That's the difference, right? An escape masters you. An escape that promised freedom from your stress, from your pain, from your life, actually ends up imprisoning you. The thing you went to get away from things won't let you get away now. So I have a question, personal, for you. What's yours? What's your escape? Is it scrolling? Just going to sit down for a couple minutes, just check out for a minute. Hour, 2 hours later. Is that yours? Is it eating? You like to eat, not just for fuel, but you eat to escape. Again, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I can eat a whole row of Oreos. That. But when it gets a hold of you, is it drinking? Do you have to have a glass of wine every night to wind down? It's just a glass of wine. It's not. I don't have a problem. And that's not destructive, right? It's not ruining relationships, not causing you to lose your job. It seems like a small thing. But does it have a hold of you? What about edibles? It's legal now. I guess I have to talk about this. Somebody in first service, when I said that, said amen. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. Are you agreeing or disagreeing? I don't know. And then I'm like, listen, I didn't actually prepare to have a sermon on edibles, so I'm gonna check out on that. But I do know if it has a hold of you, if you need it, that's different. What about video games? Or, you want to go into another world for a while. Nothing wrong with that, unless it has a hold of you. Reading fiction, binge watching a show, something else. What's yours? What are you using to escape? Again, the definition is that you don't feel any different when you're done, and it actually starts to get a hold of you. That thing you run to for freedom that has now actually enslaved you. And again, the tricky part is they're not bad inherently. But think about the implications on your mental health if this is all true. If these things are not actual rest, if instead they are escape. And escape does not actually give your brain and your emotions what they actually need. Then that means that some of us in this room have not rested at all for a long time. You've replaced rest with escape. And all you're doing now is just kind of living your life on multiple levels of distraction. You're hitting pause on your problems. You're hitting pause on your pain. You're hitting pause on your stress and solving nothing. And overall, again, if all of this is true, overall, you're slowly deteriorating. Now, you know what I'd be doing if I were you? If I were you listening to this sermon, I would be arguing with me in my own head. And I'd be like, okay, preacher boy, that's cool. But you use the word addiction, you know? And I would be, if I were you, I'd be offended at that. Like what you're calling what I am doing, like addiction's not me. Addiction is AA, addiction is being chemically attached to something. That's not me. Like, do I scroll occasionally? Yes. I have 4 kids. I scroll to forget, right? Do I eat a whole row of Oreos sometimes? Yes. But man, to use the word addiction, that's not me. And I would be trying to kind of push away from this and kind of want to weasel out from underneath and say, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. Because the things I deal with aren't inherently bad. And honestly, I feel a little bit better when I'm doing them. And I could totally stop anytime I want. I don't sound like an addict at all. So I'd be trying really hard to defend myself. And then I'd also probably think about other people who needed to hear this instead of me. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at defending myself against these things. And as I was thinking about this, one of my favorite lines from the Chronicles of Narnia popped into my mind. It's something Aslan says. He says, how cleverly you defend yourself against all that will do you good. How cleverly you defend yourself against all that will do you good. I just want to caution you on defending yourself too well against this. And I don't know you. I don't know anything about your life. Like maybe this doesn't apply to you, but I would caution you against defending yourself too well against this. We live in a world built for this. This might be, I don't want to over-spiritualize this, this might be Satan's best play to convince you that escape is rest and to wear you down constantly. This might be what he's got going for him right now. So I would not push this off so easily. Look at Hebrews 12:1. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. So look at the way this guy writes this. He says, hey, we're gonna strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin. So he's actually making a distinction. Obviously, you knew that you needed to get rid of sin, right? If you're a Christian, you know that sin's not a good thing. You want to get rid of that. But he didn't just say that. He actually said, hey, everything that slows you down, yep, some of that's sin, but some of it isn't. And he's saying, get rid of it anyways. If it's slowing you down to living the life that God called you to live, if you're not the person God has called you to be because of this thing, get rid of it. Rip it off of you. Strip it off and be free of it. So I just want to say to you, if you're like, hey, the thing I'm doing, it's not wrong, fine, it's not wrong. But if it's slowing you down, if it's preventing you from going to that place of true rest, if you're not your best, because this thing is where you go every single time, and it's not really restful, and it's preventing you from becoming the person God has created you to be, get rid of it. Get rid of it. Or I'll say it in the Christian churchy way, you should pray about that. How about that? I won't tell you God will. I'll put it on God. You can be mad at him. Pray about it. Pray about it. Is this thing actually hurting my mental health over time in a way that I can't really see it? All right. is this an escape in my life? If you come back from the escape the same as you left, it's addictive. And then here's the third thing. The third way you can tell it's an escape is an escape excludes God. An escape excludes God. True rest, I believe, true rest, true soul level rest includes God on some level. True restorative, I'm better after it's over rest requires the presence of God on some level. Look at what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens." That's me. "And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Rest for your souls. Ooh. So Jesus says, hey, we need to go to him for rest. That's where we need to go. Don't go scrolling. That's not where rest is. Don't go to a video game. Don't go to drinking. Don't go to eating. Jesus says, no, go to me for rest. He's the source. So if what you're doing to rest does not include Jesus in any way, I want to say it's not rest, it's escape. Now let me clarify. I don't mean that the only rest is like this fervent prayer where you're only praying to God. I don't think that's true. And I just want to be clear. I don't think all escape is automatically evil. I think it's totally okay to play video games for a while, or to jump into a fiction book, or to eat a big meal. I don't think those things are wrong. I don't think escape is always wrong. I think escape is wrong when it gets a hold of you, and I think escape is super dangerous when it replaces rest. But true rest will include an awareness of God's presence. True restorative rest. Somehow God's going to be a part of that. Because think about this. Your mentality when you escape is it's very, I'll just speak for myself. For me, when I escape, it's very selfish. It's very, I'm going to shut this thing down. I'm kind of like a turtle going into a shell, and I'm blocking out the pain and the frustration and the stress and all the stuff of life, and I'm blocking everything off so I can just be. But when I'm blocking all of these things off, I'm also blocking God off, and it's just me. And I don't think in that shell that I can be truly restored without God. You're shutting off everything, but you're also shutting off the source of rest as well. So you might be sitting here thinking, okay, Pastor, this is cool. You've talked a lot about what escape is, but you haven't really showed us what rest is. And no, I haven't. Part of the reason is because I think to tell you what rest is just as hard as telling you what escape is, in that I think we all do it in different ways. We all have different ways we escape, and I think we're all going to have slightly different ways that we rest. So as I thought about this, I thought, you know what, here's what I can do. I'll just kind of tell you how this works for me, and hopefully you can see some things that maybe you can take and work for you as well. So for me, I kind of have them tiered out as most restorative, most restful, and then kind of down from there. So for me, my top tier, grade A rest for me, is spending an extended amount of time with God in prayer, walking outside, all of those together. And here's why. So I got a lot of stuff on my mind, okay? I've got a lot of things going on, and I've got a lot of emotions, some pain, some hurts, some worries, some fears, all that stuff. And in order for me to actually have mental and emotional rest, I have to do something with this stuff, okay? And I can't just push it off to the side, because pushing it off to the side is just a pause, and it's going to come right back the same way it was before. So I need to do something with it. And so for me to do something with all this mental and emotional stuff, I have to give it to God. I have to pray. And it takes way more than like a 5-minute, hey, Lord, good morning, what's up? I need an extended amount of prayer to be able to give him my stuff. Now, if you got to listen in on those prayers, you'd be like, that's not praying, that's whining. Yep, sounds that way. But I'm getting this stuff out of me and handing it to him. especially if I've had a recent pain in my life, like an emotional or a social thing happen. If I'm carrying a lot of pain, I got to give it to him, because listen, pain can't be avoided. It must be processed. Did you know that? See, that's part of why escape's so bad, because some of you are carrying some heavy pain, some deep stuff. And every time you escape, all you're doing is pushing it off to the side, escaping, and then when it comes back, it's exactly the same. You're not healing from it. You're not processing it. You're just pushing it off every once in a while. It's not getting better. You have to process this, and the best place to process this is in the presence of God. So I'm in the woods walking. Part of the reason that's important is because if I don't walk, my mind wanders, so I let my body wander so my mind can lock in. Does that make sense? I need to be doing something, and I can focus a little bit better. And there's something about being in the woods somewhere that's just better for me. So the walk will be extended. I will pray a lot. Now, the whole thing isn't prayer. What happens is I can give God this stuff and whine and get the venom out of me, and then I can walk. And like I can be quiet. No. I can be peaceful. It's different, right? And I can have an amount of time where I'm just walking, me and God, and I've given him all my stuff, and I'm not carrying it anymore, and I feel the engine shut off. You know, it's like squeaking and churning, and then it stops. And I feel the steam start to rise off of my brain, off my emotions, and I can actually, truly rest. Peace, internal, genuine, deep peace. Restored, renewed, healed. I leave different than I came. Huge difference. You can probably, if you know me well enough, you can probably start to tell how long it's been since I've done this. There's a slow deterioration if I don't. I need that. That's top tier rest for me. And I need that on a pretty regular basis. Another level of rest would be an amount of time with a small group of people. I'm an introvert, so it needs to be a small group of people. The best number for me is one, and that person is my wife. And I try to spend time with just her on a regular basis. A weekend away with her is very restorative for me. But again, listen, I can't do that selfishly. I can't go into a weekend like that just all about me. I have to include God in that. I have to be aware of his presence. I have to be grateful for that time and active with my connection with him and with her in that time. Or even if it's just a small group of people sitting around a bonfire, something about that, you know, where you have substantive conversation and you can just feel God kind of moving in this small group of people. That's restorative to me. That's restorative to me. It's not small talk. It's something else. You know, that deep connection you have with people. So that's my second tier. I would also include in that, I know this is weird because I just said that I don't do cardio, something about running on my stupid treadmill. I don't know what, it's like, maybe it's closer to death. That's probably what it is. But there is something about being on my treadmill, listening to a sermon, that like God just moves. God just moves there in a different way. And then third tier, I would call this is my third tier rest. Church. Well, not preaching. This is very exhausting. This is the opposite of rest for me. I'm an introvert. But gathering with people who believe in Jesus, having that feel, that community feel. And then those 25 minutes where we spend singing, connecting, worshiping God. Man, that for me, that's so important to have just a time where I can connect with him, just a time where I can remember all the things he's done for me, remember how grateful I am, remember how faithful he is. It's cleansing to me. It's restorative to me. I need this on a regular basis. True rest involves handing over your stress, your worry, your pain, your burdens to God so that your brain and your emotions are not carrying them. And there are lots of different ways you can do this. Those are mine. You need to find yours. I talked to a guy recently, actually the guy who kind of introduced me to this idea of escape and rest. He said that his was golf with a group of buddies. He goes out and he golfs, And he says, there's something about it that I come back better than when I left. I've talked to other guys where it's fishing. Usually it's going to be something that involves you moving in some way. But you need to find yours. I'm not the same as you. I don't have the same personality. I'm not wired the same way. You need to find the things that truly give you rest. So again, I just want to ask, what if your mental health isn't as good because you haven't been doing this? You haven't had a moment where you're not carrying that mental load. And even when you're not, you just paused. You've replaced rest with escape. And it's hurting you. It's hurting you. So I want to give you homework. It's church. I'm giving you homework. Here's your homework. You got two things. One, I want you to really think through what would be restful for you. And this is a know thyself kind of a thing. You're going to have to think this through. You're going to have to do some deep reflecting. What are the things that you do that you're better on the other side of it? That God can kind of do some work in your soul and you feel different. It's not a pause, it's a rest. And I would even tier them out. Like I said, I know the best ones and I know some secondary ones and some tertiary ones. I want you to really know yourself. Because again, think about how important this is. If rest is this important to your mental health, then you need to find the things that truly give you rest. You have to find them. You have to. So think this through. Pray this through. Ask God to help you find these things. And then your second piece of homework is I want you to know the things that you're escaping to. You should know that too. What are your go-to escapes? And again, I don't think they're all evil unless one's got a hold of you. And if something's got a hold of you, here's what I would suggest. If you're doing an inventory of the things you escape to and you recognize that one of them just has a hold of you and you can't seem to get away from it, I'm going to suggest something kind of crazy. I think you should tell another person. Bring it into the light. There's something the Bible talks about, bringing these kind of things into the light. They die in the light. If you try to deal with it on your own, I think it'll find its tentacles, will find a way to keep you. And I know there's going to be pushback, because if I were you, I'd be like, listen, I got it. I understand. I got it. And part of the reason is because you're going to be embarrassed. What a dumb thing to be addicted to, right? I'd rather confess heroin than this, right? Like, I just feel like an idiot being addicted to TikTok or being addicted to a video game. Like, that's so stupid. And you're going to be embarrassed. But man, I'm telling you, if you want to be free, I was on the treadmill this week. The fun thing for me is whenever I preach a sermon, God preaches to me first. He gets a hold of me and makes me go through this whole process. I was running on the stupid treadmill, dying, and I just felt God really impress upon me. You need to delete that app off your phone. I'll even tell you what it was. It was Twitter, X, whatever it is. Get rid of it. It's mostly political garbage right now anyways. And I was like, here's what always happens, and maybe this happens to you. I was like, that's stupid. Why do I really have to delete? I'll just do better, God. And I just felt God like, no. Get rid of it. So as I'm running, almost dying on the treadmill, trying to I need to get rid of this thing, and I hit delete. And I tell you what, when I set that thing back down as I was running, it was like, and you just felt this tether snap. And I felt free. It was like something happened. Wow. It did have a hold of me. What a dumb thing, but it did. And I felt different afterwards. Don't take that lightly. Satan wants you to be all caught up and all tangled up with these things. Nah, throw off every weight. Everything that's hindering you. Sin, yes. Other stuff, yep, get rid of it. If it's slowing you down, if it's preventing you from becoming the person that God created you to be, get rid of it. So, know what you rest with. Know what you escape with. Get rid of anything that's got you. Cut the cord. Become the person you were created to be. Pray with me. Lord, pray for the person who maybe as they're sitting there right now, they realize it's been a long time since they've actually rested. Done a lot of escaping, not a lot of resting. I pray that you would show that to them. Draw them into a rest, Lord. Give them the wisdom. Show them the things that will give them true rest. Your presence. Lord, I pray for the person who's an escape has become a prison. It's got a hold of them. Lord, I pray that they would see it right now in their mind's eye. They would know the cord has to be cut. They would have the bravery, the boldness to tell somebody else about it. Cut it, bring it into light, kill it. Don't let it hold them anymore. I pray for rest, Lord, true rest for our minds, for our emotions, so that we could be the people you've created us to be, Lord. Don't let us live beneath that anymore. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.